Okay, go ahead.
Hey Pam,
Yes.
where was the Hershey curling rink?
Country club.
At the country club.
Yeah.
We're on the air.
So now we started, so we can't talk about other things. So we'll get started here with some more people filter in from different classes, but welcome to our issues class on our Pakistan-Turkey trip from last fall. So we have our panel up here who will answer some questions. We have a mic we can pass down. You can also speak loudly and so that people can hear you. It'll come through that. So we'll ask the travelers a series of questions. So if you want to answer, just kind of raise your hand. You don't have to answer every single one, but if you have something you want to share on a question, you can do so. And so just a kind of a quick overview of the trip. We went to Pakistan to interact, to learn more about the schools that the Presbyterian Education Board runs there. So we flew to Turkey, had one overnight in Turkey, then flew the next evening to Pakistan, got there really early in the morning. We were in Pakistan for about a week visiting a few different schools in different communities, including an overnight at the school in Sargodha, which we sponsor. We were there for the dedication of the boys' school, which this church funded, meeting some of the kids that we provide scholarships for. And we visited a few other schools in different communities, Song the Hill, Martinpur, Lahore, and got to see some of the cultural sites in Lahore and Pakistan there. And then we went to Turkey, and 5 members of the PEB staff who'd been there for a really long time went with us, and we went to Istanbul and Cappadocia, Ephesus, Hierapolis, Pamukkale, Laodicea, some of those places. So a lot of like early Christian sites. So we'll talk about that as well. But first question for the group: what was a moment during the trip, either to Pakistan or Turkey, that surprised you, or maybe challenged assumptions you had that you didn't realize you were carrying about whether it's your first time traveling to places like Pakistan or Turkey, or the people or the situation? So something that surprised you or maybe challenged assumptions you didn't know you were carrying on the trip. Yes.
I think the thing that surprised me the most right from the beginning was the incredible graciousness of the people there and in Pakistan, and how truly, truly grateful they were. Sometimes we get the idea when we travel that people in foreign countries hate Americans, and Pakistan is an Islamic nation and they're not going to like us and we're going to stick out. But it was not like that at all. They were quite fascinated by us until we went to the border. We didn't see a Westerner, so we are sort of unique. But they were so welcoming, and it was totally overwhelming the first school we went to. And they were greeting us with rose petals and garlands and cheers and cards, and you started to think, where's the rock star? It can't be me. That was just absolutely amazing to me.
Thanks.
One of the things that I learned that I just had no awareness of is that the majority of children that are educated at the schools are Muslim. And so I think about, it just sort of flashed in my mind in Northern Ireland, the efforts that were made, in the 1980s and 1990s to help bridge that divide between the Catholics and the Protestants through the children. And I feel like the school, in addition to providing an amazing education to in a country that does not offer any kind of public education, it's also an opportunity for children who grow up in different faiths to come to know each other and to know and to establish friendships and understandings of each other. And the schools all have morning assemblies every day, and part of that morning assembly is always to read from the Bible and to read from the Quran. So it's just integrated into the whole educational system of the schools.
Anybody else? Something that surprised you or challenged an assumption?
I thought it was fascinating. Was it Cappadocia where the caves? Yeah, I mean, the caves really were amazing, where the Christians lived and hid out from whoever would be their potential enemy. And the dark church there was very fascinating and surprising to me.
So there's this place called the Dark Church where in Cappadocia you have these kind of caves that you can easily dig out, these sandstone, and they had found one that had been kind of closed up for years and years. So when they kind of found in this cave, all the paintings were in pristine condition because no light had faded them. So you go in there and it's just covered in these mosaics, pictures from the Bible and everything. We tried to sing a song, they shut that down. Probably for a couple of different reasons. Probably didn't want to have too much reverberation in there, or other people coming in. Didn't want to stick it around too long. So it's a very small space, so if people each stay 5 minutes, no one's ever going to get in. But it was a really kind of amazing thing. So, next question, as you visited PEB schools in Pakistan, what did you learn about faith, education, or resilience that you think our congregation at Derry needs to hear most? So as you visited these schools, what did you pick up about how they did faith, how their education worked, how their community resilience came together that you think we need to hear and learn from? Tom?
I'm not sure I'm answering the question the way you want me to say it, but what I was impressed with, having been there several times, I really spent a lot of time with the teachers as opposed to dealing with all the ceremony of entering the schools with the drums and everything else. But talking to the teachers was, for me, one of my most memorable aspects of this trip. And the reason I'm saying this is many of the teachers, and I'd say maybe 80% of the teachers that I spoke with, were graduates of the school. And to listen to them talk about their experience in the school and their desire to give back. I mean, I get chills right now thinking of how they related to me and how they spoke from the heart of what this really meant to me and how they were so pleased that they could give back to the children and pay it forward, so to speak. And the dedication was just overwhelming to me. That was truly a very memorable part of my trip.
The thing that really stuck out to me was, I remember after like the second night we were there, I called my girlfriend and I said, like, I was so impressed by these people's faith because I was almost ashamed of myself to a way, because here I can practice so freely and I don't commit as much as I should. There's like an actual cost to them. And when they do it 100%, hour and a half long services, singing, and everything it's such a major part in their life. And I said to Elena, I was like, the word I said, and she yelled at me for this, I said, like, they're doing this, but they don't get a lot in return. And she chastised me, she goes, yes, there's a lot you get in return. And I was like, yes, you're right. Which kind of goes to show, and I think just sort of the resilience and the dedication. I think when we read what Jesus told us, if we want to find Jesus, we look in the face of those who have the least. And I think that was one of the things that I got to see that firsthand, and it shamed me in a way, but it also sort of reinvigorated me in a way.
Tim?
To kind of follow up on Dan's, I think the thing that impressed me the most is that they celebrate. Their focus is never what don't we have, but we don't have a school with a roof on it, but that's not an excuse. But they focus, here's what we do have, here's what we're able to accomplish with it. And it's right from when you come in, like you come in and almost every school has like a big scoreboard on, here's how we did on our national exams. Here's how, they really celebrated the success and they led from the front. And I think that really helped their resiliency because they knew it was never like, well, if only we had this, we could do better. It was always looking forward. That was a very positive sense of it.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback back off of that, the thing that I really noticed is that they really did the best with what they had. They really did, and sometimes, they would have classes in closets. Their science equipment was from the 1970s. It was just very, very old things, but, they made the most of it. They really did. And I think another thing is that they had really a common mission, like a common vision. And even though if it was unspoken, it was, love these kids and let's try to make them successful. And it's like everybody was on board. So that was really neat to see.
One of the contrasts, I guess, when we went to the boys' school that was just dedicated brand new, they had a couple science labs that had new equipment. And the girls' school was so old, 100 years old, they had like one microscope and then cardboard models of them and no labs. So in the new school we're building, there'll be 2 new science labs for the girls' school. So they'll have some of that new equipment to be able to use.
I'm kind of piggybacking on what they said. The way they valued education in our country, we just take that for granted. Of course you go to school, of course you have quality schools, and they really, really value education. We never saw a discipline problem. I mean, I cannot even imagine. And you think about one teacher and 30 preschoolers, and it's just unbelievable. But parents sacrifice so much to get that education for the children, and they appreciate it so much, and I think that's why they come back and teach. But the value that they put on that and the gratitude that they feel for what they do have is just incredible.
Yeah, I was just, when we met with the teachers, and that was a great thing, just meeting with those teachers. But I remember, us asking them, what is your greatest challenge with the school? What is your greatest struggle? And one of the teachers was like, discipline issues. I'm like, no. You don't have, as a teacher, I didn't see any discipline issues. Maybe they were on their best behavior. But, the enthusiasm for learning was palpable. Definitely the enthusiasm for learning. And yeah, we, do take a lot of things for granted here, but they did not take anything for granted there.
So can you describe a moment on the trip that felt especially holy or spiritually significant, and what made it so for you? Dan, I know you got one.
Hold on.
Well, I mean, you're the one that walked extra way to go to all these special pilgrimage sites. I mean,
So Pastor Steve was outing me as a closet Catholic. So I was raised Catholic, Italian Catholic. When we went to Pemmican in the ancient city of Hierapolis is where St. Philip was martyred. And St. Philip is buried there. And I was so excited when we got there. I was like, we're going to go. Because, I guess that's sort of the romantic notion of going on a pilgrimage. And, the Canterbury Tales as you go to the tomb of a saint, and you can sit down there and you can pray at the foot of the saint. And it's, it gets you a couple days off purgatory, and it's fantastic. But, I wanted that experience. It's a romantic thing. And I said, like, where's St. Philip's tomb? And our guide said, oh, we're not going there. It's really far off. And I was like, I want to go. So while everyone else went to the amphitheater, I went. And I looked it up. It was 1 kilometer that I went. Uphill, stone, both ways, and it was stone steps.
barefoot.
Barefoot. Oh, no. My shoes did wear out a little bit halfway through. I did have to crawl up the last 3 steps because they were really, really steep steps. But I got up to the top, and I was thirsty, and I saw right in front of me was an old pilgrim's fountain that the old pilgrims used to go, because there was a church there. I mean, let's be real, it probably wasn't. St. Philip's probably wasn't buried there. It was long empty. But there was a feeling, sort of, my ancestors making the pilgrimage up there praying at the feet of the saint's tomb, and then kind of just walking down and drinking. I drank my water bottle in the Pilgrim's Fountain. I thought there was a sort of connection with the past there.
Tom?
A special moment, a special moment for me was also at the Dark Church. Venus, who is Vita's sister, struggled to get to the main museum area, so I walked with her behind, and I wasn't sure she would be able to do anything other than just get there to the entrance. Well, she rested there while we had an orientation. And then later, we all dispersed to go to the different areas of our choice. And most of us headed off to the Dark Church, which Pastor Stephen told you about earlier with the beautiful frescoes. Well, the next thing I know, I was looking out on the walkway to the Dark Church, and there was Venus and Vita coming up. I thought, how in the world did she get here after I struggled with her to just get partway there? And then I waited for her to come into the church, and when she came to the church, she started crying. And I think I'm going to start crying if I talk about it, but just to see the beauty of her faith and the joy of her being in this special place, and my knowing the struggle for her to get there, and I'll never forget just looking at her and seeing the joy and the tears running down her face. That was just so memorable to me.
I did purchase a book there in Cappadocia. It has like pictures of the Dark Church. Not I take pictures in it, but I have a book of all the different kind of icons and paintings throughout this whole larger park, historical park in Turkey, of these different kind of icons and mural paintings in these churches. If anyone's ever interested in looking at it, I do have it.
Well, the one thing we've hinted at with these caves is it's not handicap accessible, these places, and they're not on the ground, so you have to climb to get up into these things. We made it, I didn't know.
After going to the wrong church, by the way, we went and we saw this big step up, and we thought, this is it, right? And we climbed up. This nice man from Switzerland helped me, and we climbed all the way up there, and it was the wrong one. But it was worth it.
Yeah, it's stunning. But the one for me, and I'll be maybe the one voice here, a spiritual moment for me was we, in Turkey, were taken to a performance of what a worship service might look like for the whirling dervishes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard of whirling dervishes for a long, long time, and the Sufi sect of Muslim, which is the more spiritualistic, I guess you might call them, part of Islam. But never having seen it, I didn't really know what to expect. But for me, I have a sister, and my sister, when she was younger, used to just turn in circles for, seemed like hours. Would just go in a circle. I don't know what it did for her, peaceful, grounding, I'm not sure what it was. I couldn't do it. But watching this very choreographed, very precise, very slow movement, I found myself just calming down, just watching them. I have a little guy here that I purchased, but I have a hard time describing to you the peacefulness I felt watching that. I don't know what it would have been like to have attempted to do that. You have to know what you're doing, like the skaters do and all of those people, the ballet people, so you're not just falling down. But to watch that curving motion as it not only in place, but around. And there was one leader who would start the next motion, and then they would all pick up on it till the whole group had done it. And then it would start another motion, and they go. But finally, eventually, they are all twirling as they're moving, but it's not fast. It's a very calming, slow motion. So I found the Whirling Dervish presentation very powerful.
So, can you, where did you see God most clearly at work? In people, places, or unexpected encounters?
Well, there are a lot of places, but I think the one that stood out the most to me was the orphanage in Martinsville, which, you know, you saw a young missionary from Germany came over, brought his entire family, and was just so dedicated to taking care of these kids that had nobody, that were living on the street. And we heard lots of stories about, you know, kind of what their life was like before the orphanage. And just to see the faith that he had to take his family over there, and the love that he showed for these young boys was just incredible.
I think that spending time with the PEB board and just witnessing their faith, because as was mentioned before, you know, they sacrifice a lot to be Christians in Pakistan. And it was just amazing to spend time with them, to visit the schools with them, and to visit Turkey. With some of these people had never been out of Pakistan. The men had never left Pakistan. We didn't even know whether they were going to be able to join us until, the day before we flew. And they were so grateful, and just watching them experience, helping, you know, us experiencing being there with them was just amazing. And watching the one guy took pictures of everything. And he had 2 little boys at home. Yeah, and that was just fascinating. It was wonderful, and that just their faith really stood out to me.
Good.
Yeah, I thought it was also fascinating on Sunday after we did church. I guess Reverend Abel is his name, and Vita worked out an opportunity for us to visit the madrasa, which was this Muslim school of what, 5,000 boys or something like that. Showed me the ecumenical spirit that they were exhibiting in this country where their divisions are very strong.
So, how did relationships, whether with students, with teachers, with the PEB board, or fellow travelers, shape your experience of the trip? How did the relationships you had, or strengthened, or created with all the people we met, how did they shape the overall experience of the trip?
I think the kids at the school just really kind of made such a huge impression on me. I think Pam had those numbers. You have to pay to go to school in Pakistan. There's no provided. And even if every single child wanted to go to school, there's 13 million seat deficit. So every child says, I want to go to school, and by some miracle we have the money to do it. There's 13 million students who are just going to have to draw lots to figure it out. I think something like 60% are illiterate.
Of the adults.
Of the adults are illiterate.
Are literate.
Are literate.
60% literacy in Pakistan.
Yeah. It's what they're doing there to better themselves and really seeking it out. Especially the girls who, I'm sure it's, you know, like, there's so much. This is my first trip outside of the country, and I chose Pakistan, so it was a bit of a culture shock. And I had this. What these kids were doing is, like, we're blessed to live in America. We're just so blessed to have the abilities and the resources that we do. You know, going to schools is we have police that go out and round up kids to send them to school here, and these kids by pursuing this, especially the young girls who I imagine, you know, being far more educated and going out to some of these villages is not going to make you the most popular one around. And then out on top, maybe if you're a Christian, it's like, you know, 2 strikes against you, but still doing it, pursue it to better yourself. We met this one young lady who is now a lawyer, and she came back and she's like, I want to help build this school because what this was done, what is such a small gift for us, you know, $33 a month for 12 months for a day student, to have that impact on a human being is just so inspiring.
So I enjoyed the whole trip. I enjoyed the experience in Pakistan with the school and the school children and with the fellow travelers, but I have to say that I particularly enjoyed traveling in Turkey with the 5 members of the PEB board, just to see their delight in being outside of a country like Pakistan and see paved roads, nice shrubbery, manicured lawns, beautiful buildings, plentiful stores, and everything was so orderly that, but to see it through their eyes and to just be with them and share the joy they had. And somebody mentioned about Horace, the young man that had never been on an airplane, let alone being outside of Pakistan. It was like watching a little kid, and you just have to be so excited when you see somebody experiencing things that you take for granted, and you're watching him for the first time see things that we just, as I say, are ordinary to us, but it was just wonderful. And to me, that was a very special part of the trip, just experiencing and sharing their joy of this experience.
And experiencing each other.
Yeah.
You know, rooming with Tim and Tom and.
Well, that's an experience.
So, in Turkey, as you toured historic Christian sites, how did standing in those places deepen or complicate your understanding of the church's global and historical story? So we talked a little bit about, you know, the dark church or the pilgrimage site, but, you know, as you kind of stood in some of those places where early churches were, where saints were, how did that kind of deepen your understanding of this larger Christian story?
Laodicea was one that impacted me. They're still excavating there, but the church that's there early is a pretty large facility. But I was really intrigued with the baptismal areas, the baptistries in these early churches that could be used today. I mean, we're direct descendants of early church worship, and in my head, I don't know where I'm thinking primitive kind of thing, but you go to Ephesus, you go to Laodicea, and the culture was tremendous back in these places, and the church finding its footing into these large commercial cities must have been just, I have great appreciation for those early Christians, especially then at times when they had to escape to live in a cave. Just amazing to me.
It really made me realize the miraculous spread of Christianity when you go to these ancient churches and realize that it wasn't that long after Christ that all the way in Turkey and how Christianity spread, and seeing Christianity active in some of these places, it really hits you that it's rather miraculous.
And there's walking on the same steps that maybe some of these ancient biblical characters walked, and you're walking on.
And also seeing, according to legend, the doors of Hagia Sophia are made with Noah's Ark. So we saw it. I'm not saying it might be true, but I prefer it to be true.
It's kind of cool, you know, you think about, we went to these tiny little cave churches, and then you go to the Hagia Sophia, which was the tallest building in the world for centuries. And so you had these giant, massive church, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, tiny little church dug out of a cave, and they're all faithful. And I always enjoy kind of some of the artwork, because again, not as many people were literate, not as many Bibles moving around, but they're telling the stories through art. And you see these different pictures depicting what they kind of thought of were some of these scenes from the Bible. And some you can easily kind of pick out because it looks familiar, and some are different. You're trying to ask questions, okay, what does that symbolism mean? And it reminds me of, I think, the tragedy in the early process of Reformation when they wanted to get rid of all these images because they thought they were bad, and so many were destroyed, unfortunately. And I'm glad we kind of brought it back, whether it's our stained glass windows in the chapel that tells the story of the Bible and the sacraments around our sanctuary, to these cave paintings that Christians over the course of 2,000 years tell the story through art. And there's so many similarities between them. It shows a connection across time and space.
And through music. I was quite fascinated when we went to the church service in Pakistan. And it's always interesting to see what's the same in another culture and then what's different. And of course the music with the psalms and the repetition of the refrain and the different instruments and how different countries pull their culture into Christianity through the art, the music, etc.
It kind of skips down a question, so I'll skip down to that one. So what did this trip teach you about the global church and our shared faith across cultures, languages, and traditions? So that kind of answers that. But others, what did you kind of pick up, from both travels in Turkey, but also worshiping in Pakistan that you kind of picked up about our shared faith across cultures, languages, traditions?
I think for me, when a scientist says something is true, it means you can replicate it and you can put it in different contexts and you still get the same result. And I think whether that is a giant dome church built by a Byzantine emperor, a little cave dwelling, or a church in Pakistan that has a giant wall and a bunch of armed guards around it, it's still the same gospel story, and it still rings true for all these different people from all these different cultures. And I think that really kind of affirmed that for me.
And who is this God we worship? If any one of us were born in Pakistan, the likelihood is we would be Muslim, not necessarily Christian. So that madrasa experience really was meaningful to me for that reason. I think we all share the same God.
One thing that's interesting for me is we were in the church in Pakistan and Lahore helping lead worship. It was cool that we could get up and we sang How Great Thou Art. And, people who knew English could kind of follow along, even those who didn't could kind of recognize the song and had that meaning. And then I think there was maybe a surprise baptism that day. Still not sure if the pastor knew he was doing it or not. Or just pretty much they came up and whispered and then they came to this baptism. And just kind of different, some of the differences, but similarities. So they didn't have like a big font. He had a cup that looked a lot like our chalice for communion. And didn't go through all the same liturgy, but some of it. And it was kind of, I was asked to do like a prayer at the beginning to bless the child a little bit, like a baptismal prayer with the water, and then the minister did the actual baptism, the same basic Trinitarian formula. Then this random pastor from Texas who was there, who had a connection with a Pakistani church in Texas, he did something, and it was kind of interesting, these people from different cultures all participating in this baptism that we weren't really sure what we were doing, but we knew enough of it that we could do. It was kind of a cool experience. So was there a story, a person, or an image from the trip that has stayed with you and continues to surface in your prayers or reflections since returning home? Something that's really kind of stuck with you, that keeps kind of motivating you, inspiring you, causing you to kind of think or reflect on?
I think we're all impressed with Vida. Many of us have met her, but just to see her in action in her home country was so inspiring to me. There was a picture in the very beginning when we were having an orientation with the PEB, and it's a picture that I will always remember. It's a picture of Vida with perhaps 5 or 6 men, And this is a Christian woman dealing with men in an Islamic country. And the fact that this is how everything sort of began, and she had the faith to persevere and to stay with her mission and to increase this wonderful PEB mission to so many schools, so many children. That picture always resonates with me. A woman, Christian woman in a Pakistan country surrounded by 5 men.
Other images, moments, Rob.
Just gonna follow up with Leah. She truly was an extraordinary woman, and I'm trying to think of someone else to compare her to give you kind of an idea. And it's like, not a perfect comparison, but like Mother Teresa was all about the children. And she was all about the children too, the children in Pakistan. And you could really see that.
I've told this story before, but it just sticks with me, and it really has changed the way I view things. But talking to the teachers and the former students, and one of the former students who said to me, this school didn't just help me achieve my dreams, it helped me have dreams, because without it, I have nothing. And that has stuck with me. It's made me realize that I don't spend my money the way I should. I find myself thinking constantly now about, what? $100 for that? That's 1/4 of a scholarship. And Al will tell you I do that all the time. You know, hey, we could cut out that subscription we're paying for, and that would be 3 months of schooling for a child. But it really has stuck with me that a little bit makes a huge difference. And when you really start looking at, well, if I bought that cheaper cut of meat, that would be enough for this month. And if I did this, I really won't miss it, but that would be enough for this month. And it doesn't take much to make an unbelievable difference in somebody's life.
I think Debbie and Dan.
And mine kind of builds on that, but from the other perspective. Since I've been as many times as I have, I've gotten to know these staff people in different ways than these folks have. And Simon is the one that stands out to me. And Simon was one, we shared a joke one year. He was driving the car, and we were laughing about how could you learn to drive in Pakistan? Why would there be any driver's education? What would be the point? And he said, well, you only worry about vehicles larger than you. Okay, point noted. And then we were talking about other things, and I said, you know, one of the things I'm trying to learn is when women marry, they take their husband's first name. So Vida Javed was not her last name. That was his name, his first name, Javed Gill. And then when he passed away, all of a sudden she became Vida Shavon or something like that. And I went, wait, what's that? And that was her maiden name. And now we talk Vida Javed Gill, so people can, all that mixture of women's names. But I said to Simon, you know, if I had married Jim Tebby, who was then the president of Foreman Christian College, the Presbyterian College in Lahore, I would be Debbie Tebby. And he looked at me, and then he just burst out laughing. I was like, that's how it could be. But he shocked me on our last few minutes there. I was sitting on a sofa in the hotel lobby, and he came around and he said, this is for you. And he had bought me a doll somewhere in Turkey and gave it to me. You know, that was money he certainly didn't need to spend, but very grateful when I looked at her.
He said images, so I had to throw. This right here, is the whole page right here, and I'll leave this book out so you guys take a look at it. This is the whole trip.
There's also one in the church library.
There's also one in the church library. We were waiting for the bonfire to start when we stayed over in Sargota in the girls' orphanage, or not orphanage, the boarding house. And I didn't know what to do because I don't know how to deal with young girls. So I had my camera and I taught them how to use a camera. So this whole page are pictures that they took of themselves. And I think the visual language is, we all know what a good picture is deep down, and it's the same across all cultures. And I'm kind of depressed because their pictures are really good. And they've never held a camera before, and so.
You're a good teacher.
Yes, I like that phrase. That was good.
So if you had to name one takeaway you hope our congregation carries forward from this trip that you learned, that you've kind of shared, what would it be, and how might we live it out together?
One thing that I remember the most is what she said, and it was kind of like her motto, her life motto. She just said, "I do my best and let God do the rest." And I think about that every single day. In fact, I was talking to someone last night who was kind of struggling, and I said, "Look, all you can do is do your best and let God do the rest." And he's like, yeah. So it's like, Vita's influence and her passion and her heart for what she does there, that just keeps moving forward, keeps paying forward, and I kind of live by that motto too right now.
I think just that we need to remember how blessed we are, and that it doesn't take a lot, like Sue was saying, do a little
We give out of our
less here.
generosity.
Yeah.
I mean, out of our abundance.
Yeah, we have so much that we can share, and just the smallest thing makes such a huge difference in a culture that has so little. And I think that's really important that we remember that, because we have, and when we are giving, we're starting to build the girls' school, and they really need it. And when you see the concrete that's falling off the walls, and there are rooms that they can't even use because the ceiling is, that would never happen in our schools, we wouldn't even ever think of that, but just every little bit that we can do helps them.
There are simple things when you come back from a travel to a third world country that are little blessings in disguise. The idea that you can put your toothbrush under the tap water and scrub your teeth without using bottled water. You can take a shower, and if the water gets in your mouth, it's no big deal. And so, or you can just put a cup under the tap water, and you get a nice cold, refreshing glass of water. So I think everybody that's traveled in that type of situation, when you come home, it's those things that are right away you think, wow, this is so nice. I don't have to worry about bottled water. I can swallow the water. I can scrub my teeth any way I want. I can open my mouth in the shower. But these are, they're silly things to talk about, but they're real meaningful.
The electricity doesn't go off every other minute.
And it was great. Stephen caught the vision before he went. And that's how we ended up with a boys' school. And having gone, now Stephen has really bought in, and look what's happened already with the girls' school. It's amazing.
I just want to add, one thing that was particularly meaningful for me was when we went and visited the girls' school in Sargota. On the wall of all these buildings that were neglected because the government took them over were these names of these missionaries from America, Presbyterian Women's Group from Wyoming, in memory of someone's mother, in memory of someone's father. And I think what really kind of lit the fire for me was this is not the only thing our church does. And we're also not going to be here forever. So we have to kind of keep, the mission doesn't end. It keeps on. You have to kind of keep it up, or else you know, these people's faith gave this gift to these children. And I think sort of it's incumbent on us to sort of help move that on.
It's awesome. We have the opportunity to do so much good in Pakistan, and we're in the midst of our scholarship drive. And if you want to give a scholarship, there's forms upstairs by that kind of open coffee kitchen window. You can give online. We hope to do, at least 50 scholarships. Again, we have all those students there.
31 right now we can do.
We have 31, so we need 20 more. I gotta get my in-laws on this. Remind me, make a phone call for me. But also building this girls' school, it's just, I'm constantly amazed at what this church can do when they catch a vision, when people come back and share. So to date, we have committed for the girls' school $817,000. So that's 3 months of stuff. And we hope to get like to $850 by St. Patrick's Day. $800,000 builds the building, and then everything else is helping, put in computers and desks and chairs. And then there's the auditorium they need to build. And then the second part of the phase 2, which is the administration buildings and stuff, and trying to get other churches to work on that. But if someone's like, hey, here's $250,000, we take it and we build an auditorium. It's just amazing. And it seems like, well, that won't happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody called and was like, hey, I want to make sure they have this auditorium, because that's the kind of people we have at Derry. It's just amazing that we can keep doing this and keep making a difference, because it's not just a one-time thing. This one school has been there for 100 years, and all the different students who have gone through it, and they've created new generations of teachers and people. It's a gift that teaches people to dream. It's a gift that teaches people they can have so much more in life. It's a gift that enables future gifts. So thank you for all your giving. We want to open it up to you to have questions for us. Claudia, do you want to share anything since you just got here?
Anything about anything?
About Pakistan, Turkey, takeaways?
I guess, when you get off the bus and these kids are waiting for you in a big line and playing drums and cheering and waving pom-poms and throwing rose petals, it does make you feel a little bit privileged. Yeah.
And it's like, at first, you think that's, it's like, oh, you don't waste all this money and time on us. So it's like, I don't want to have my name on a plaque. That feels so, look at me. And I get that. I'm often that way. But hearing Vida and them talk about it, it's really meaningful for them. It's not about us. And so often we make it about us. They want to show that appreciation, because it's part of them being able to live into that gratitude and that practice of gratitude. And for us to say no thank you to that hospitality, that's taking something away from them. And what Vida says, they want names on things because it helps students see, here's a church, here's an individual, here's a couple, here's a Sunday school class that cares enough about students, boys or girls, thousands of miles away. They'll never meet, and yet they still care enough to give this gift. And it kind of softens their idea of people from America, from the West, Christians around the world. It puts a name to it. When we have our big picture at the boys' school, all of us at the 300th anniversary gathered in the courtyard that George took of us, that might be the only really Western or white people they see on a normal basis. They're walking past, here's a church of people, and they've never met us, but they created this for us. And that's the vision they're going to see often. And I think we each have little images of us, for each of us, of that trip, of individuals, of staff, of students, of girls, of boys that are always going to stick with us. I think some of those names and those pictures will stick with them. I think that's really important. So questions y'all have for this group about the trip, about the schools, about Pakistan, anything? Yes, Mark.
Maybe for Debbie or anybody who is perceptive enough, I'm just, what did I say? No, I'm interested, how do children play there?
Well, Marley, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that teachers ask us consistently, if you could have anything, what would it be? we would love a good playground, a safe playground where our children can play. They play like us, they play like your children, they play cricket, which I don't have any earthly idea
Yeah,
what.
I'm gonna give you a secret. Dr. Tim, he's a solid cricket player.
They play like the children you know.
Marbles?
I didn't see any marbles. Now, that might be, I don't know.
They had a great time with the beach balls. The beach
Yeah,
balls.
we took beach balls and
They
threw 'em up.
dance, the girls love to dance.
Yes.
They asked me to play tag with them. You notice, into that outside the boys' school, they're playing soccer, cricket, volleyball, so sports stuff. Who knows what they do in their rooms? But I mean, they just when we were all gathered in the courtyard after we did this art project, they were just bouncing balls, playing keep away, laughing, joking. Those are all the things that they enjoyed. So what this group did after that is we all contributed towards a playground for the girls' school that they can build. That can be a nice new playground. Because for a relatively small amount, they can get a lot of good playground equipment. So something that they asked for and that we want to make sure happened.
Rob had the idea of asking for these uniforms, which the boys, and girls, I guess, use.
No, not girls.
Not girls.
Boys.
Just boys.
And, and we saw first at the first school we went to, and also, karate. That they're bringing in a teacher, and both boys and girls are learning karate. I think physical fitness in Pakistan is really hard because the air is so polluted that to exert yourself and breathe heavily is not good for you because you're inhaling all this pollution.
Jim, you had a question.
Yeah, kind of a different kind of question. This week there was an article about the Islamists in Pakistan pushing the idea that they need to reinstitute and really enforce Sharia law. And I was wondering if any of the folks over there were expressing fear that what they're doing could be taken away or ended. Did you sense any of that or any fear?
One of the things that when we went to the madrasa, we caught like an interfaith squabble. There was 3 gentlemen who had 3 different opinions on what Sharia law was and whether or not Pakistan subscribes to it. So I think that is I think we went to Sangla Hill. Sangla Hill had all the churches burned down because there was a blasphemy accusation. That threat is there, and there were armed guards outside all the schools, outside the church. I think that's just something they live with. But I think their faith is so strong that they're still willing.
Well, the Minister of Education showed up there at Sangla Hill.
Foreign Affairs. At
Foreign
Mark.
Affairs.
No, Mr. Minorities.
Minority of
Yeah.
Minority affairs.
For at Martinport, yeah.
But he was Sikh.
Yeah. I think like, overall, there's always that concern, but I think they've also learned that the larger part of the government has kind of learned over the time that they don't want to get rid of these Christian schools because they do such a better job because they end up giving them back. And so many of the leaders have actually attended some of these schools, including the colleges like Foreman Christian College, so they understand their benefits. And I think Pakistan overall in the government is really trying to work to have better relations with the West, with the U.S., and they realize trying to do some of that is going to ultimately hurt them in their overall country and modernization. So there's always those fringe voices. We have fringe voices here that want us to go, full biblical law on things. And you always hear that popping up, even from candidates in government. Oh, we need to, govern by the Bible. We need to have the 10 Commandments here, there. You're always going to have those voices. But for the most part, I think it's going to stay a Muslim nation. And they, in some ways, subscribe. There's different versions of Sharia law, but in theory, Muslim law has to follow. The country has to follow that law. But I don't think they're worried about having the schools taken away at this point. Tom?
Well, I think we have to remember that Pakistan is a relatively new country. It's only 78 years old, and they're bound by some. If you don't like it, it's bound by some of the English colonial times and what they set aside in that country. And then you look at the countries that border Pakistan, you've got Iran, you've got Afghanistan, you've got China, you've got India. You know, there's still that hatred between Pakistan and India. You wonder if it'll ever go away, and they always have this unresolved problem with Kashmir, who's gonna be in control of Kashmir. So not only are they trying to form a new country and find out who they are, but they've got all these threatening people on the border that make it a very difficult time for them. And I think I still think, even though they're 78 years old, they're trying to find out who they really are.
I want to caveat that the country of Pakistan is 78-year-old. The current government in the form that it is in now, with an elected prime minister, is really only like 20 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
military,
they've got the military
dictatorship.
I think
It's like
an evolving country.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who they really are.
And one year when I was there, we met with a group of imams, that Majid Abel, the Presbyterian minister, works with these imams from all different kinds of Islamic groups. And they wanted us to know, they are working at the grassroots level to try and get rid of that, because they know the value of their relationship with the Christians. And so they wanted us to know that simply isn't how the whole of Islam feels.
I would also say with Pakistan though, we were in Pakistan that, Muslims and Christians are working with. There's a lot of other areas in Pakistan that are nothing like where we were.
Yeah.
Like Northwest area, where there's been a lot of Taliban
Extremists,
positions.
yeah.
So there's more extreme areas in Pakistan that we were.
Yeah.
And I think the concern is, the ideas and extremist terrorist organizations start in those areas and start to migrate in. It's constantly a source of destabilization in that country.
We were in the Punjab region, and that's where all of the PEB schools are, in that particular region of Pakistan.
Well, to me, it's one more indication how important education is. We've just got to educate people to think, to ask questions, to work together somehow. Find out we're much more alike than we are different, no matter what your faith is. So to me, education is key.
We heard a really great story about, there was this gentleman who had a very violent history in some very dark times of Pakistan, and he was a very scary figure, but he had all daughters, and he wanted his daughters to be educated, so he got them sent to the PEB schools. And apparently he showed up at the PEB offices one day, and they were all terrified of him. But he's a parent, so they had to talk to him. And he told them a story about he was sitting there with his sort of party mates, and they were sitting there talking about how awful the Shia are, or something along those lines. And his 12-year-old daughter came in there and stamped her feet and said, we learned that this is not what we believe. This is tolerance, and kind of screamed at him. And then they were terrified because like, oh no, what did they do to my daughter? He wanted his second daughter to go there, And now, I mean, like he's not like they told us he's not the super progressive, person of the year, but his heart has softened enough. And I think that's like the real value of the schools.
What's the ratio of boys to girls getting educated
In the country or in the schools?
in their country, in their school? In the PEB school.
So it started out with women mostly, because that's what but then when these girls grew up, there was no one for them to marry that was educated at all, so then they started having more boys. So I don't know the percentage, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't
It's
know,
more
I guess
girls than
it's
boys
still
in the
more
school.
girls.
Yeah, but that's
But
why
it's
they were.
growing. Because they have to, when they get past 5th grade, they have to be educated separately. So places where there weren't schools for boys, now they're trying to catch up and create boys' schools. So they can educate the boys there too.
So who started this? Was it the PEB some years
Started
ago?
Years
what?
ago, missionaries in northern India at the time.
Presbyterian missionaries.
And they found that teaching girls,
There was nothing for girls.
but teaching girls helps the economy in the long run because educated girls make sure their family get educated, make sure that, and that's
This was back in
that's the
1800s.
start.
Yeah, back in 1800s.
Yeah. If you wanna get something done, what do? Talk to the women. Some of us recognize it.
I think that was the exciting thing though, because I mean, these PEB schools, they're really creating future leaders.
Yeah.
You know, especially females. And, you know, the females that, you know, the teachers and the alumni, they were so confident. They were very bold, you know, and that's what really struck me. And I think having someone like Vita as like a role model, these children look at her. You know, they look at her and they're like, I can do that, I can be that. So that was very exciting.
You can tell Vita's out in those schools all the time because everybody greets her, the children greet her, she greets the children, she greets the teacher. She's not somebody that's over here and the schools are over here. They are out there and.
And she's a rock star. She comes on campus
Oh, yeah.
and everything pivots to her.
Is there a waiting list for students?
Yes.
And
At one of the schools, they had just recently opened a new classroom. They had taken this little canteen area and converted it to a classroom and hired a teacher and an assistant and brought in 30 new 3 and 4 year olds. 30 3 and 4 year olds in a little tiny room, and no centers or anything. And the kids had only been there about 2 to 3 months, and they